General Thomas Graham, 1st Baron Lynedoch GCB GCMG, was a Scottish aristocrat, politician and British Army officer. After his education at Oxford, he inherited a substantial estate in Scotland, was married and settled down to a quiet career as a landowning gentleman. However, with the death of his wife when he was aged 42, he immersed himself in a military career. During the French Revolutionary Wars and the Napoleonic Wars, Taylor described Graham as tall, square-shouldered, and erect, his limbs sinewy and remarkably strong. His complexion was dark, with full eyebrows, firm-set lips, and an open, benevolent air. His manners and address were frank, simple, and polished. Early life and education. Thomas Graham was the third and only surviving son of Thomas Graham of Balgowan, in Perthshire, and Lady Christian Hope, a daughter of the 1st Earl of Hopetoun. He was born in 1748, and was educated at home by the Reverend Fraser, minister of Munidi, and afterwards by James Macpherson, the collector and translator of Ossian's poems. He went up to Christ Church, Oxford in 1766, and the following year he inherited the family estate following the death of his father. On leaving college, he spent several years on the continent, where he learned French, German and Spanish. On his return to Scotland, he applied himself to the management and improvement of his estate, enclosing his lands, erecting farmhouses and offices, granting leases to his tenants, encouraging them to implement improved methods of husbandry, and to cultivate potatoes and turnips on a large scale, which had hitherto been regarded as garden plants. He also set himself to cultivate improved breeds of horses, cattle, and sheep. In 1785, he purchased the estate of Lynedoch, situated in the valley of the Armand, where he planted trees and oak coppices, and improved the sloping banks bordering the stream. Fond of horses and dogs, and distinguished for his skill in country sports, he rode with the foxhounds, and accompanied the Duke of Atholl, who subsequently became his brother-in-law, in grouse shooting and deer stalking on the Atholl moors. He later said that he owed much of that education of the eye with reference to ground and distances, a useful talent for a military man, to his deer hunting at this period of his life in the forest of Atholl. Early political career and marriage. In a 1772 by-election, Graham stood as a Whig candidate for Perth, in opposition to James Murray of Stroan, brother of the Duke of Atholl, but was defeated by a majority of only 6 votes out of 100. He remained active in the political field but withdrew shortly before the general election of 1774, having become engaged to the Honourable Mary Cathcart, second daughter of the 9th Lord Cathcart, whose sister was betrothed to the 3rd Duke of Atholl, son and heir. 2 years later, in 1774, he married Mary, and on the same day her elder sister became Duchess of Atholl. Jane, wrote Lord Cathcart, has married, to please herself, John, Duke of Atholl, a peer of the realm. Mary has married Thomas Graham of Balgowan, the man of her heart, and a peer among princes. A solicitous husband. When his wife discovered on the morning of an Edinburgh ball that she had left her jewel box at Balgowan, Graham rode the 90 miles to and from Balgowan using relays of horses to ensure that she would have her jewellery at the ball. Her portrait by Thomas Gainsborough was highly acclaimed when exhibited at the Royal Academy in 1777. The painting now hangs in the National Galleries of Scotland, Edinburgh. Graham spent the next 18 years as a quiet country gentleman, spending his time on riding and sports, studying the classics and making occasional visits to London and Edinburgh, when his carriage was stopped in Park Lane, London, by a highwayman demanding money, jewels, and watches at gunpoint, while 2 accomplices seized the horses' heads. Graham, who was on the opposite side of the carriage, leapt across the ladies to the carriage door, and collaring the assailant, threw him to the ground. Then, drawing his sword, which at the time formed part of a dress suit, he threatened to run the man through, if his associates holding the horses' heads attempted to come to his assistance. They immediately fled, and the prostrate highwayman was arrested. Loss of his wife. Mary Graham's health began to decline, and in the spring of 1792, on the recommendation of her medical advisor, she went to the south of France with her husband and sister. However, during the voyage she died off the coast near Hyères, France on the 26th of June 1792. Her sorrowing husband hired a barge to take the casket to Bordeaux, but near Toulouse a group of French soldiers opened the coffin and disturbed the body. He closed the casket and returned home to deposit her remains in a mausoleum, which he built in the churchyard of Methven. Graham would himself be laid in the same tomb 50 years later. Mary Graham is commemorated in a 4-part Scottish fiddle tune composed in her honour, entitled The Honourable Mrs. Graham of Balgowan. The loss of his wife preyed deeply upon Graham's mind, and first, he set out for 12 months of foreign travel. However, still overwhelmed by great sorrow, and now in his 43rd year, he tried to drown the thought of his loss by adopting a military career. Before the incident with Mary's coffin near Toulouse, Graham had sympathized with the French and the revolutionary ideals, but from that point on he detested them and saw his military career as a way to take revenge. Sir Walter Scott, in his vision of Don Roderick, refers to the romantic motive which led the grieving husband of Mrs. Graham to devote himself to a military career, nor be his praise o'erpast who strove to hide beneath the warrior's vest affection's wound, whose wish heaven for his country's weal denied, danger and fate he sought, but glory found. From clime to clime, where war's trumpets sound, the wanderer went, yet Caledonia, still thine was his thought in march and tented ground. He dreamed, mid-alpine cliffs of Atolls hill, and heard in Ebro's roar his Lynedoch's lovely rill.